Hello everyone, today I'm here to review Dog Lover. This was sent to me by AEG for the review. That doesn't change how I perceive the game or how it plays mechanically. So let's talk quickly about how the game plays to give you a general gist, and then I'll give you my thoughts and opinions. So this Canine Card Game plays out very similar to the previous AEG title Cat Lady. There is a grid of cards, 3 by 3, so 9 cards in the middle of the table, and that's where you're predominantly going to be taking cards from, with one row or column under the watchful gaze, in this case, of the watchdog. Now there are two other markets of 3 cards. There is the rescue shelter for you to adopt. We'll come on to that in a little bit. The other column are dog tricks, and that's going to be different ways to take cards. So let's talk about how your turn actually works out. So at the start, at the end, during, you can basically play cards, and in the middle of it, you're going to be taking some cards from that central 3 by 3 grid. At the start of the game, if you're playing on the default mode, you can take either a row or a column, but only a maximum of 1 card can be taken from the row or column that the watchdog is looking at. Those cards are instantly added to your hand once you've taken them. And then you've got an opportunity again to play cards from your hand. Some are going to need to be straight away. Some are on your turn do this. So food, for instance, is often you discard that straight away to take a canned food cube, and that will be used to feed, hopefully, one of your dogs at the end of the game. So there's lots of cards that are requiring you to do something straight away, including traits, which can be bad for you if you take them at the wrong time. So often these will say you have to, on this turn, attach it to a certain size dog, big, medium or small. If you can't, you have to discard that trait and maybe some food or another type of card along with it. There's various types of cards you can get, such as bones, which you want a few of, otherwise it might lose you points. There's other ones where they're favourite things for dogs, like tennis balls, leads, and a doghouse and stuff, and you're collecting those in unique sets. You can have as many of those sets as you want, scoring you more points the more unique things in your sets. So all of these different cards that you can get from the market, you're going to be keeping some in your hand to score at the end of the game. You're going to be scoring some or cashing them in straight away for food and stuff like that. And then you refill the market. Once you've refilled that market, make sure you do move the watchdog, because your card, so if you've taken the row or column one using that dog trick, at the bottom of it, it's going to have a little asterisk, and that's saying from that row or column that you took, that's where you're moving the watchdog. So the next player cannot just take all of those cards. They'll only be able to take a 1 from under that watchdog's vision. And that's basically how the game plays until you get to the end game card, which is near the bottom of the deck. You put it there at the start of the game, and depending on when that card comes out, you finish that round, and then everyone's had the same number of turns, and you're going to score up. Now this is very important. You are supposedly a dog lover, and therefore you need to feed your dogs. Any dogs that you can't feed are going to lose you 2 points, but the fed dogs, they're going to score the points on them. They're going to score the attached traits and any tucked cards, because maybe you've taken them on a walk or something like that. You add up all of that sort of goodness, all of your sets of the pet's favourite things, and then you see who's won, and there's the tiebreaker of whoever's fed the most dogs. Has the most scoring dogs in terms of just the number of them. It's a pretty easy game when you get down to playing it, and there's a couple of nice little quirks, so let's talk about those. First of all, you've got adoptions. Not only will some dogs pop up in that main grid, there is that rescue shelter. If you get 2 adoption tickets, well, you can you can trade those in at any time with one of the dogs in that market, but make sure they're fed. And then you can also get training cards that you can either tuck behind dogs for points or spend them, the number of the cards, to get new trick cards, and that's going to give you new shapes that you can take from that central market. And all in all, that's how the game plays. There's maybe a few other little quirks, but that's a good enough gist so you know what you're getting into. So let's start off at the very beginning of the game, the setup. Well, unfortunately, it's a little bit of a negative for me. First of all, you need to remove cards based on your player count. So if you've got 2 players, you're going to be removing cards for 3 and 4 players. It's just a bit of a bugbear of mine having to go through a deck and, split it between a few players. Or even 3 players, you're still having to remove those 4+ cards. I do prefer it in games where they sort of base the deck on any player count rather than you having to remove some. But it doesn't take too long, but a minor annoyance if you're not playing at the 4 player count. Then, to sort of slow the thing down again, you need to remove all the dogs from the deck, shuffle them up, and then deal 1 out each. I'd much rather have just 4 basic standard starting dogs in the box that each player can get 1 of those, and then any left over just go back in the box, because then that main deck is always going to be shuffled after you've played a couple of times. It means you've shuffled out all the dogs, you've shuffled them up, dealt some out, and then you've got to shuffle them back in. So you need to do a good job of shuffling them back in, otherwise you've got sort of a wedge of dogs coming up into the market at one point. So there's a little bit of time from getting the game out of the box to getting it to the table, and your player count is going to maybe speed that up or slow that down. It's just something to be aware of. Like I say, it's a slight negative. It's a bit of a frustration of mine when it's not just get the cards out and play. Thankfully, once you're past setup, the game is really enjoyable to play. You've got a lot of different choices to make. First of all, on every turn, what column or row am I taking if you're just using that standard dog trick? Maybe you've got some more throughout the game, and then you've got choices of what patterns to take. Now, it never takes too long, even if you've got multiple different patterns, and you can even screw other people over. If you know they're going for those favourite things, you can try and make sure that based on their dog tricks, they're not going to be able to get all of the ones that are available in the market if you take that row, for instance. There's some nice choices there about screwing an opponent over, but that's harder to do when it's not at 2 players. As soon as you get a 3rd or a 4th, that market is changing a lot between your turns. The choices obviously don't end there. There's the timings of when to adopt dogs from that rescue shelter or take them from the central market. It's really risky to take them near the end of the game if you don't yet have the food for them, because am I going to get, I'll have another turn because we've not seen that end game card yet, but is there going to be the right types of food in the market? Well, that is certainly a risk that you might want to take. You might also not want to, because if you can't feed them, not only are they not scoring, they're losing you points. Anything attached to them or tucked under aren't scoring either. So it can be quite a swing of points for you not being able to feed a dog, as it kind of makes sense in a game called Dog Lover. You need them to be well fed. The tucking element is also another choice that players need to sort of get to grips with, because there's certain traits that allow you to tuck extra food cards, or maybe the adoption cards that you could use to get more dogs for a lot of points. And there's trade-offs of going, is it worth me not getting that extra dog that maybe I could feed, but this one that is fed already, I think I've got the right food for that, I can get lots of points for this one. And, they've got multiple uses, some of these cards. Do you go for the training to just tuck it under a dog for a point, or do you go for those extra dog trick shapes to take from the market? Lots of choices that build together without ever really sort of overwhelming you. You can often quite easily work out, okay, this is what I'm trying to do, I think this is going to be a good idea for me, or if you've got that trait, let's try and exploit it. That watchdog that is always looking at one of the rows or columns is a really interesting design choice, because often you are looking at the market and you're excited when new cards come out. But in this, because it's moved to where that person's card tells them, it's often covering the majority of those newly replenished cards. And that means, unless you've got a really funky sort of patterned trick to take a card from here, here and here, you've got very little access of the cards that have just come out. And it means that even though a great load of cards can come out of the deck at once, chances are it's very hard for one player, the next player, just to swoop in and get all of those brilliant cards, leaving a bad market for everyone else. You often have to take a bit of a bad card and then maybe two good ones. And the traits can be super bad for you, but because you can play the cards from your hand in any order, you can often make it work out that, well, I don't have a medium dog to attach this to, so I'm going to have to discard it, but I haven't yet played the bone from my hand, so I won't be losing it. Again, some nice choices in there, and it all stems from you having to not just take that newly refilled bunch of good cards. So it keeps the game sort of balanced even at two players. So it's not just, oh, I've cleared this load of bad cards up and you can swoop in and get the good ones. Well, you can get one of the good ones at least. Much like the dog on the front of the box, the game is full of some really nice, sort of very cute artwork of the different types of dogs. They've all got different names. That's a really nice touch. It just makes the game feel a bit more sort of cute and fun and light-hearted, even though you've got all those sort of choices of that market and everything going on. Now, the design of those cards is really quite intuitive. Like, you've got the points on one side of the dogs, the traits which attach have the points on the other, so they sort of nicely fit together. There's two ways to know what size your dogs are. So when a trait card is talking about a medium-sized dog, you can look at the paw prints that are on the two cards and see if they match. It also, at the top of the card, of the dog card, says medium or small dog, and that's just a nice way that you can look very quickly at that and sort of match them up. It's quite intuitive from that point of view. There is one thing, however, that took a couple of rounds of taking the different foods to know this is that colour cube. The wild ones are obvious, the canned ones are quite clear, but just between the scraps and the dried bits, I struggled. I mixed them up a couple of times when I was taking from the market. It didn't win me or lose me the game because of that as a mistake. I just did badly in the very first game we played. But I did find it just, the colour of the two was just a tad too similar, and I wish that they'd had the actual just coloured cube on the card somewhere, even if it was adjacent to sort of like the dog bowl filled of dry bits sort of thing. But overall, the card design worked really well. It was just that food pit that I had an issue with, other players didn't. But the great looking deck of cards. Well, overall, it's very easy to recommend Dog Lover, the Canine Card Game, to gamers out there. It's got a good choice from that central market, and those dog tricks, just changing up the patterns that you can take from that market, that is a really cool mechanic. You're trying to go for certain sets, you're trying to make sure you've got the food to feed the dogs, otherwise the things you've attached or tucked, doesn't matter what you've done. And there's, many choices throughout the game, whether you're tucking or using an adoption card or training card or whatever. That's some great, interesting choices that make you ponder which is the best move without ever slowing down too much. Yeah, there's that slight bit of slowness at the start of the game for setup, depending on your player count, but it's 100% worth it, because by the end of the game, you've almost forgotten, well, you have forgotten that. You've been enjoying it, you've been looking at these cool dogs coming out of the market and giving them sort of fun traits that kind of work with dogs. So overall, a really good game. That is Dog Lover from AEG. Thanks for checking out the review. If you want to see other content, make sure you like, subscribe and all that sort of jazz. There's other reviews, which hopefully you can see some videos on the screen now. Maybe you could click one of those. That would be cool. Bye.